This is the Trauma Skilled Schools model in a nutshell. It's the graphic that really shows what the model is all about. It is designated into 5 steps, and I want to just take just a couple minutes and walk you through how do we implement it and what in the world does this graphic mean. And it'll get a little bit messy as we move through it, but just follow along and we'll see. We really start, if a school is going to implement the Trauma Skilled Schools model, we're going to start with step 4, which is an assessment and implementation. And what we're doing is we spend during that entire process, we start with a readiness assessment that gives us an idea of where that staff is in regard to the issues of stress and trauma. We also do some student surveys that give us some information of where that school is as far as student body and where they may want to go. And we'll look at a little bit of that student data in just a second. So we start with those assessments. We then move in the first 3 months of implementation, we want to train. We do that training on knowledge, and we want that to be everybody. We want them to have an understanding of what the effects of stress and trauma are on learning, but also on behavior, because those are the issues. Learning and behavior, that is our wheelhouse as educators. So we want to give them that understanding of the impact of stress and trauma on learning and on behavior. And we do that over the course of the first 3 months. And then we follow that by teaching about building resilience and how culture can build resilience. And we focus that around 5 resilience factors. You see those there on that screen on the diagram. There's connection, which is a one-on-one relationship with an adult, a healthy relationship that meets the needs of the students, not necessarily the needs of the adult. So that connection is a one-on-one relationship. And we talk about what that means. We talk about boundaries. We also want to build a one-to-many, or a sense of belonging, is the second resilience factor. The sense of achievement. And this is the difficult part. We as educators think of achievement and we automatically go to the thoughts of academic achievement, student achievement. And we're not talking achievement, we're talking about recognizing student strengths. Students who are experiencing the effects of stress and trauma feel defective. They feel like they can't accomplish anything. They feel like they are worthless. They feel like they are unworthy of any kind of positive attention. That drives some of their actions, and it really can also give insight into some of the learning difficulties. Well, what we're trying to convince them is that they are good at something. And sometimes that thing that they are good at may be outside the classroom. It may be something that may be the best caregiver for their grandparents or for their little brother or sister. So we find what they're good at, we get creative at finding that, and then we emphasize that to defeat that false belief that they really don't have anything that they can do. The fourth resilience factor, real quickly, is autonomy, giving them options to where they learn that their choices really do matter. A lot of those young people feel trapped. They feel like they're just a victim of fate. Bad things just happen to them. And by giving them guided choice, we are trying to give them a sense that their decisions matter. Also in autonomy, we want to teach social and emotional skills that really help them to manage their behavior and to manage their emotions. In fulfillment, we're trying to give them a service orientation, or an orientation toward others, and the fact that they do have something that they can contribute, which again combats some of the false beliefs that they have. So we spend the first 6 months with that kind of training. We're also immediately following that training on the building resilience and the resilience factors. We do an individual skills assessment, and this is with staff. And it really relates to those 5 resilience factors and tells us, okay, what is it that the staff feels like or has a need for training or for professional development? Where do we need to focus our attention on those resilience factors? And then after that, we take all of the information that we have from the readiness, all of the information that we have gleaned from the trainings and from the data points that we've collected, and we develop a plan for that school. We don't develop that plan. There is a lead team that really is helping to lead through this entire process. That lead team is really selected back in the very beginning of the implementation. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, how we select that lead team and different things. But we put together a plan that that school will follow. And then for the next year to year and a half, we are actually begin the training of individual skills. Uh, and so then we follow that up. At the end, we complete it. In the end, I say that's typically a 2-year cycle to do initial implementation with this model. We follow it up with a repeat of the readiness assessment and the student surveys. The result of that process as we go through this model, just some highlights really that come out is when we look at this, every implementation involves all staff, and that is led by a representative lead team that is there. And they work with leadership to decide what initiatives are put in place, what happens, what do we focus on, what professional development do we offer. So implementation looks different in every context. We have put this in place in urban schools, in rural schools, and it looks very different based on the school and based on their context, based on their needs. The second thing, every implementation, as we say, is unique, and it's guided by a local plan, driven by data points that we collect throughout this process. I mentioned that, and you saw some of the student surveys that I mentioned. And if we look at that, here is the results of the student surveys. Now, this is a pre and post, so it combines this. And what we're looking at is the student surveys will give us information or really kind of a ranking or a scale based on the 5 resilience factors. So you see in this graph, you're seeing how they scored in relationship to connection, to belonging, achievement, autonomy, and fulfillment. And there are also some other questions that we have in that dashboard or in those surveys that just give us some other general questions about the culture and what resilience factors we need to focus on. We can also take that data and we break it down and we look at it by grade level. And here I've just taken the data that you saw and broken it down. You can look by grade level and see where that is. That's the kind of data that will drive the plan. And these are some of the questions that are on those surveys and the response to them. So for instance, in this category, if you were say you're in a high school setting, you're running a 9th grade academy, you may have a very good 9th grade or freshman academy for, freshman success academy or whatever you have, really focusing on that 9th grade transition. But if you look at the first question on this survey, you can say, okay, 9th graders, only 43% of our teachers really care about them. So that'll tell you some of the things that you've missed. That's just an indicator in this particular data set. So the data is what drives every implementation. We also have every implementation really includes and leads to the development of a sustainability plan. That lead team puts together a plan on how are we going to train new staff? How are we going to keep these things going? And how are we going to move forward? So if we look at the Trauma Skilled Schools model, it's a 2-year initial implementation. Looks different everywhere. It's guided by leadership and a lead team. And it really tends to move the needle in how we're doing school to help students who are experiencing stress and trauma.